On Sunday morning we were looking together at Isaiah chapter 40, and that sense of our need to trust in God. Those who trust in the Lord will rise up on wings like eagles. That sense of finding a renewed strength in God. And yet so often in life what we pursue, isn't it, is actually to be independent, to be able to stand on our own 2 feet, to be able to do our own thing. I remember a number of years ago Jackie Foggett coming to the church to do some training with the pastoral care team. It was on bereavement work. And I remember as she arrived at the door of the church that evening, folk came to say to her, "Can I give you a hand?" And so Jackie handed them things out the back of her car. And I remember her walking in with just her handbag. And I was wondering whether that would be me. And the answer was no. Not just because I don't carry a handbag, but because my answer would tend to be, "No, it's okay, I'll manage." And so I would have struggled into the church with absolutely everything in my hands, hoping perhaps that somebody might get the door, or I would just kick it on the way in so that I could get there. That sense that I carry so often, that being independent is what it's about. And Jackie's actions that night had an influence on me. It really got me thinking about what I do and what I say to other people when I say, "No, it's okay, I'll manage myself." Is independence all that it's cracked up to be? When we sang together just a couple of weeks ago with a girl, we sang, "Brother, sister, let me serve you. Let me be as Christ to you. Pray that I may have the grace to let you be my servant too." There was something in that song about learning to give, but also about learning to receive. Something about being in healthy relationships where both of those things happen. Where we display, I guess, a vulnerability as well as a willingness to serve. And as we go into Isaiah chapter 40 tonight, maybe there's something in that for us. About our need to understand our own vulnerability and our need of others and our need of God. Some questions to start you off this evening. First of all, how readily do you accept help from others? Are you more like Jackie or more like me? Is it a good thing or a bad thing to be where you are, to be independent or to understand your reliance? And then thirdly, what impact does asking for help have on your relationship with others? What impact does it have when others ask you for help? What impact does it have when you actually realise you need help from others and ask for that? When we look at this whole question of vulnerability and willingness to ask for help, I find myself going back to the story of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. That evening in which he was betrayed, after having shared a meal with his friends, asking his friends to walk with him and to pray with him in the garden, acknowledging his need of their support and their help and their prayers, his vulnerability. We are, in that sense, stronger together. I can't remember whether that was exactly what folk used during the independence campaign. If it was, perhaps it's lost a bit of an edge. But there is that sense, isn't there, that actually being in community and sharing with other people, learning to rely on them and them somehow knowing that they can rely on us, brings a real strength. Something that should actually mark out the church, should mark out Christian community, that we are stronger together. It also, though, goes into our relationship with God. And I found myself, as I was preparing this material, asking this question: what impact does the value we place on independence have in our relationship with God? If we talk about being independent all the time, managing without other people, does that pour over into our relationship with God? Do we begin to think that we can manage without him as well? In the men's group, we've been looking together at the Lord's Prayer. And of course, part of the Lord's Prayer is this: give us this day our daily bread. And if we use that prayer regularly, then it brings us back to a place of remembering that we need God, that it is God who provides for us. Give us this day our daily bread. Not give us enough today for the month, but actually day by day maybe trust you for what we need. To be in a place of reliance upon God is what Jesus taught us. Relying on God for daily provision. Never forgetting our need of Him. And I wonder whether at times we do. Certainly for myself, I have to ask myself about that. Do I try to be so independent that I no longer see that I have a need for God? Trust in God. Trust in God is so important, isn't it? Learning to walk with Him. Knowing that, in a sense, we need to be independent, to stand on our own 2 feet. But this doesn't take away from that. And yet that we learn to trust in God and walk with Him day by day. That is what Isaiah chapter 40 is about. That recognition that for all of us there are times when we grow weary, times when we grow tired. That's what Laura reminded us of on Sunday. No matter our age, there are times when we get tired and weary. He strengthens those who are tired and weary, is what Isaiah says. Those who trust in the Lord will find their strength renewed. As they trust in Him, so God will take them to a place where that strength is renewed. They will rise on wings like eagles. They will run and not get weary. They will walk and not grow weak. Some questions then for you again. In what way does our focus on being independent make us less likely to trust in God? Secondly, what is your response to this passage? And there's a number of options on your sheet. And then thirdly, what is God saying to you just now through this? Isaiah says, the Lord is the everlasting God. He created all the world. He never grows tired and weary. In this way, God is unlike us. All of us grow tired and weary, but the Lord is the everlasting God. He never grows tired and weary, and it is because of that that we can rely on Him. And that part of reading the passage is really important. I want now to look at this in a slightly different way as we finish this evening. Because despite this, despite the fact that God never grows tired and weary, despite the fact that He made the heavens and called out the star, each one by name, He still calls us to work alongside Him. He calls us to partner with Him. Not because He can't do it without us, but because He chooses to. He chooses to call us to partner with Him in the work of the kingdom. That's a remarkable thought, isn't it? The God who made everything, the God who could do anything without us, invites us to partner with Him. He makes Himself vulnerable. If we take seriously the fact that Jesus is God come among us, then we see in that picture God's own vulnerability. He makes Himself vulnerable by inviting us to partner with Him, by inviting in that moment that fact that we may say no to Him. He makes Himself vulnerable. And so some questions as we finish this evening. In Jesus, we see a vulnerability. In what ways do you think of God as being vulnerable? Is that a new thought for you? What does it evoke for you? Secondly, do you think of yourself as a partner with God or a servant of God? Is there a difference? Which is right, or is there an element of both? And then finally, what do you take away from this evening?